Hey guys, how you doing today? It's Thursday. Well, when you see this, it'll be Friday. Um, been canning today. We did 6 quarts of hamburger earlier today. If you want to know how to do it, check out my other videos. Uh, but now I'm getting ready to do baked beans. You saw the mushrooms that Chris did yesterday. They're awesome. So let's talk about the baked beans for a minute. They're just a traditional baked bean. The recipe I got it off of, I got it from Carol, the thrifty chic housewife. Check out her channel if you get a chance. Good channel. Um, but she calls them better than Bush's baked beans. So we're gonna see. I've never actually done them before, but we'll see. So things you need to start with. Let's just talk about the beans first of all. You're gonna need 4 pounds of navy beans. If there's another bean you want to use, go right ahead. I know most baked beans are made with navy beans. They're a good choice. That's what she uses also. So to do the beans, this is probably the most time-consuming thing. You want to quick soak them. I mean, you can overnight soak them, and you're basically just going to follow the directions on the back of the bag of beans. And what you're going to do is you're gonna put your beans in a pot. Make sure you have a pot big enough. This particular pot here that they're in is a 12 quart. Yeah, 12 quart. So it was big enough. But it's your beans followed by 32 cups of water. You bring that up to a boil. Shut it off. Put your lid on it. Let it sit for an hour. Not on the heat. Take it off the heat, shut the heat off, take it off the heat, put your lid on it, let it sit for an hour with the lid on it. After that, you're going to hit the process we're at now, which is drain the beans. Then you're going to add 24 cups of water, 6 cups per pound. The initial quick soak and boil is 8 cups per pound. So if you want to do less than 4 pounds. And then we're going to bring this up to a simmer. Let it simmer for 30 minutes. All right, so we're about at a simmer now, but I wanted to start talking to you now because we're going to go over the ingredients and what to do next. So let me move my camera real quick, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, so got the camera moved. Next thing we're going to do is while we're getting this to simmer, is we're going to go through the rest of the ingredients. This does have a few ingredients, but nothing complicated. So get yourself a decent sized pot, or at least something big enough to hold at least 3 or 4 quarts. This here is a 6 quart pot. So we've got 12 quarts, we've got 6 quarts going. All right, so the first ingredient that's going to go in this is 2 quarts of tomato juice. Now, you can go any kind of tomato juice you want. If you want to use V8, great. Or you can use, like right here, I've actually got a combination of Walmart brand and Kroger brand tomato juice. And remember the little canning jar opener that I talked about a little bit ago? Or a few videos ago, right there? Great for poking holes in the top of these to let the juice out. That way you don't have to sit there and wait on the can opener and make a mess. These cans, the cans of tomato juice in particular, are really tall. So you should always have tomato juice on hand also. Even if you made it yourself, or you just buy in a can or a jar. Cans, I think, last a little longer as far as expiration dates go. But, or canning them, they last even longer. So, 2 quarts of tomato juice. Next thing, guess what I didn't do? I didn't open up my can of tomato sauce. So let me get that open right quick. So like I said, like right here with this can opener, I would have never been able to get those cans of juice underneath that can opener to get it open. So, got tomato sauce goes in next. So and it calls for 1 quart, which quart is 32 ounces. This is 29 ounces, so it's close. I'm not going to open up another jar for 3 more ounces of sauce. That just makes no sense to me. And then the next thing we want to get in there, I had to go get my directions. Let me give my beans a quick stir here. That way we can see where we're headed with that. Come on, Sam. Bring it, come. Come on. All right. Sorry, I had to let the dog through. I got the entranceway from the living room blocked off. Looking for different camera angles to go on here. Okay, so we got 2 quarts of tomato juice, a quart or a big giant can of tomato sauce. Next thing we want to put in there is a cup of diced onions, and you can adjust any of these seasonings to your taste. Remember, dry seasonings you can put as much or as little as you want in to suit your needs. It's when you get into the fresh stuff that it causes a bit of a headache. The onions, you can chop them, don't dice them, just chop them up, big as small as your heart desires. Those are kind of a medium to small chop, nowhere near dice. You can dice them, but it's 1 cup of onion. All the same. How you want them is completely up to you. Next thing that's going in, 2 cups of brown sugar. It is not packed brown sugar. So, if you've never messed with brown sugar before, depending on what you're doing, like if you're baking, it'll want you to, it may call for packed brown sugar, and that's literally when you scoop it out, you pack it down tight, because it has a tendency to leave air pockets in there and can be not 2 cups. So, but that is not packed brown sugar. That is just scooped and leveled off at 2 cups. Next thing we're going to put in there is a 1/2 cup of molasses, just like you would use for cookies. Get that poured in there. I love molasses. I love molasses cookies and gingerbread cookies, and anything involving molasses is pretty amazing. If you are looking to diet, these probably are not the baked beans for you. Although I can tell you so far, like I said, I've never made these, but I've done several of Carol's recipes, which a lot of her stuff she gets out of a couple different books. One is the Ball Blue Book of Canning, which I highly recommend getting. I know a couple videos ago I did a what you need to start canning video, and that is probably one thing I did not mention that you should have. Make sure you're using a trusted site. Anytime you can, you want to check on the National Food Preservation Society website. The Ball Blue Book of Canning or Preserving is 2 good books. There's also an Amish canning book, but I don't remember now what the name of it is. All right, so we've got 2 quarts tomato sauce, juice, 1 quart tomato sauce, 1 cup of chopped onion, 2 cups of brown sugar, loosely packed, 1/2 cup of molasses. Next thing we're going to throw in there is 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. I don't know about you guys, but I really like apple cider vinegar. I think it tastes great. Now, here's one that you can adjust to suit your needs, and that's liquid smoke. I'm putting 1.5 tablespoons in there. We like liquid smoke. I wouldn't go any more than 2 tablespoons or it gets overpowering. But if you don't care much for the taste of liquid smoke, go ahead and just make it 1 tablespoon. Make it 1/2 tablespoon. That is an additive. Remember, we're pressure canning this because it's already a low acidic food. All right, we are at a simmer on the beans, so let's go ahead and hop that at 30 minutes. I'll set the timer so that way I know about where I want to be. So with the beans, the reason why we're going to let them go for 30 minutes, this is actually the tail end of the quick soak process. If we were going to cook these to make like ham and beans or something like that with navy beans, we would actually drain this water one more time, fill it up with water, and let it go on a slow simmer for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's the last process to that. So, but we're not. We're just going to do a simmer. So in a simmer, in case you don't know, some ovens will say, or stovetops will say simmer on the handle, but it's right around the number 2, 1. All right, so anyhow, we got our liquid smoke in there. Next thing we need is 1 teaspoon of allspice. Allspice is kind of cool. You can do about anything with allspice. It's allspice. 2 tablespoons, or I'm sorry, 2 teaspoons of ground mustard. You can add more, add less. Any of this stuff you can add more or less to. If there's a spice that you like, you know, that you're particularly fond of, that's dry, and you think it would taste good in baked beans, you can put it in here. Just like I said, it has to be a dry spice. You don't want a fresh vegetable or anything. Sorry about that. Fresh vegetable or anything like that to go in there. You don't want to change the recipe too much, because then it can mess with your pressure canning times. I mean, this is going to go for 90 minutes in a pressure canner anyhow, because we're going to do quart jars, but we'll talk about that here in a second. All right, last 2 ingredients: a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. Dump that in there, mix it up. And this is really all there is to doing these beans. So I turn the range on, and what we're going to want to do is, while this is simmering for 30 minutes, we're going to let this simmer. Now you could say, yeah, but Brian, because we're only going to let this simmer for about 5-10 minutes, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's 30 minutes, that's 5 to 10 minutes. Well, this just started simmering, and I just turned this burner on, so it's going to take a minute for this to get up to a simmer anyhow. And they should be done about the same time. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to let this simmer, or I'm going to get this up and simmering for about 5-10 minutes. I'm going to let this finish going. It's 30 minutes, and then we'll look at what to do from there. All right? I'll see you guys here in just 1 millisecond. All right, guys. So, we got... we let the beans simmer for 30 minutes. Drain them. You don't want to use wet beans. Well, you don't want them in the water when you do this. You'll see the water's kind of yellow. Now, what you're looking for with the beans is you don't want them cooked all the way through. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but it takes a fair amount of pressure to squish it. You'll see they're still kind of firm, and see how they're falling apart, but they're not mush. That's kind of what you're looking for. Much like yesterday with the shells for the stuffed chicken stuffed shells, you want them al dente, not quite done. Reason for that is we're going to put them in a pressure canner at 240 degrees for 90 minutes. And if you remember, I said a minute or so ago that if you were going to make like ham and beans with navy beans, or just make up navy beans if you like navy beans, it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to cook that. So we got that done. We let our sauce simmer. Actually, it got away from me and boiled for a minute, but we let it simmer for 5 to 10 minutes. Now, what I said in yesterday's video, Wednesday's dinner video, was we get to try this. Now, you don't get to try it with the beans in it yet. I mean, you could mix it all together, but the beans aren't going to taste very good because they're not completely done. So what you're going to want to do is, and this is when you want to check for spice. There might be something a little more or less you want to try. And this has already been Chris tested, Chris approved. But, and it tastes really, really good. It tastes like every baked bean, the way every baked bean should taste like. And like I said, you can adjust the spices. Now would be the time to adjust them because they're all dry spices. To suit your fancy, so to speak. Alright, so now we're down to just canning, which is easy stuff, but important. So things you want to do, you don't have to sanitize your jars anymore, not even if they're new. Just wash them real good. Mine have been sitting down in the basement, so I washed them real good, and then I stuck them in this in the sink here with hot water. That's important. So let me move the camera down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing instead of staring at me. There we go there. Fantastic. All right, so things you want to do, how you want to can them. All right, so remember the jars with the writing on them? You can see that. But anyhow, you want to put 2.5 cups of beans in there. So 2.5 cups is right there at that line. You'll be able to see it on your jars if you get the jars with them, or about 3/4 full if your jar doesn't happen to have the measurements on it. So we're going to fill the jar 3/4 full of beans, or 2.5 cups worth-ish. So I did learn something new while I was off camera, and only because I've never actually had to do more than 6. This does about 7 quarts worth of beans. And my big 23-quart container will only do 6 quarts, I think. I'm pretty sure. Because I know that's what I got in. It may do 7. We'll see. But I know I can't double stack in that container. So then, what we're going to do after we get our 2.5 cups of beans in there, we're going to fill this up to the 1-inch mark with sauce. And this is when it's important to remember to use a poker or a debubbling tool on these, because here, I'll show you. Give me just 1 second. If you look in here, see how it's dry right there? Yeah, that's an air pocket. That's something you definitely don't want in this. It can throw all kinds of stuff off. So you'll take your debubbling tool or your whatever you have available, poker. There's 1,000,001 people that'll tell you not to use a butter knife because you could potentially scratch the jars and cause the jar to break. Now this is my opinion, just my opinion. If you're using a butter knife and you scratch the glass, then you are using your butter knife wrong, because you don't want to bang it, beat it to death. You're just looking to get the air out of it. I have never had an issue with using a butter knife. I use it quite often, and it has never once deceived me. So after we get that in there, grab a paper towel, little thing of vinegar. I have found now you can use water. There's no rule that says you can't use water to wipe your rims, but I use vinegar because I have found, unlike in Columbus where there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of mineral deposit in the water, Newark's water here in Ohio has some minerals in it, and it'll make your jars slightly white on the outside if you don't put vinegar in your pot right there. Which I got my pressure canners going. I've got it simmering right now, or at least on and warming. And then we're gonna put the lid on it, set nice and centered. Remember, finger tight. Which, depending on how strong you are, depends on how finger tight it is. I do it. Here's my rule of thumb, and this can apply for no matter how strong you are or weak you are. Fingers on the lid, not the palm. Fingers. Come on in, guys. Come on in. Come on in. Walk on by. Finger tight. Samantha. Sam. You'll have to excuse my dog and everybody. All right. So anyhow. Now that we're through that, now you're going to make it sound like you're going to get to hear my dog whine and be happy. Sam is a beautiful dog, but she's very emotional. All right, so after we get to that point there, into the canner we go. All right, well, we'll show you one more time, and then after this one, I'll go ahead and finish the rest of these up off camera, and we'll talk about what to do with the canner. So, yes, that's fine. So we're looking at the measurements on the side, 2.5 cups. If yours doesn't have measurements, use a measuring cup, or just run three-quarter full of the beans. So beans up to three-quarter full, or 2.5 cups. Yeah, you just don't want to fill it all the way to the top. This is one of those, you want more sauce than bean, or you want room for the sauce and the beans. And then we'll come over here to the sauce. 1 inch of headspace. I don't know if I said that on the last one, but 1 inch of headspace is what we're looking for with the sauce. Well, when you open up like a can of any beans that you buy from the store, you notice there's a lot more liquid than there is beans usually. And there's a reason behind that. Yeah, you need that sauce in there to bean ratio. All right, so you got that. Grab your debubbler tool. Debubble. Like I said, you want to make sure you get all the air out of it. And then once you get all the air out of it, if your liquid may drop a little bit, depending on how much air you got to get out of it. Like that one dropped a little bit, not much, but a little bit. So you just top it off. You just put a little more liquid in there and get it up to that 1 inch mark. And if you're not sure where the 1 inch mark is, I'll show you real quick. The 1 inch mark, whether you have a wide mouth or a regular mouth jar, is always this bottom lip right here. That's 1 inch. So, and if you're not sure, like I said, like on my stick, on my debubbling stick, I have measurements on there: 1 inch, 3/4, ½ inch, 1/4 inch, and then I've got my 3 inch marker for my canner. Now, if you buy the kit like we talked about, and what you need for pressure canning, you'll have a debubbling tool, and you'll be good to go with that. All right, so we're at the 1 inch mark once again. Just wipe your lid, wipe your rim off. You don't want anything on there, because even something really small and minuscule can cause you to not have get a good proper seal. So lid on there, nice and centered. Put your ring on there, finger tight. Once again, not the palm, just the fingers tight, and it'll stop when it needs to be. Now, sometimes when you can, these jars might get hot. You may not be able to grab it with your hand. Use your tongs. So we'll get that in there. All right. I'm going to do up these remaining cans, and then when I return, we'll talk about what we're looking for on the pressure canner. All right. I'll see you here in just one moment. All right. So we got the rest of it canned up and in the container there. As you can see, got 7 quarts, and I actually had enough left over that I'm heating some up that we're going to have for dinner tonight. We're doing hamburgers for dinner, and why not have fresh baked beans with them? So, let's talk about what we're going to do, the next step in canning these. All right, so I've had this on about medium-low the entire time warming up the water. There are very few things you want to can at room temperature. So when we put the beans and the sauce together, they were hot. The jars sitting in hot water. This water getting hot. I'm not sure what the technical reason is for that, but I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that it helps to get up to temperature quicker. I know like beans and some things, they'll turn to mush if you're not careful. So the rule of thumb is 180 degrees. I have never once stuck a thermometer to anything to see if that's the case, but I know that everything should be about the same temperature. You never want a cold jar. It can crack. Like I said, there are some things that you do from room temperature, but for the most part, everything's, remember, 180 degrees. You can check it if you like. Now, next thing we need to do, I know you can't see it on this particular canner, but there is an arrow right here on this handle, which is like this handle. Only it's on this side, and it has an arrow. You want to align it with the arrow on. Ooh, I got it right quick on your canning lid. That way, you know you're on the right side. There is a safety valve on the front right here. It's a check valve that pops up when it's up to 10. You want to completely seat your lid. Turn it so it's closed and until it stops. It'll be closed. And then you're going to turn your heat. I don't turn mine all the way to high, but you can. And we're going to let this thing start to build up pressure and steam. Now there is a vent valve right here, which that vent valve, oh, sorry about that. The vent valve that's right here is where you put your weight. You're going to turn this up to high. Once this pops and this is blowing solid steam, this will pop up. That's a lid lock, okay? It'll lock that lid. You will not be able to turn the lid. You will not be able to take the lid off. Nothing. That way, you know, if you have a dumb idea of trying to take the lid off while it's under pressure, it won't let you. But this is going to pop up. Once this pops up and you see a steady stream of steam coming out of here, look at your clock or set your timer, 10 minutes. You want that thing to blow steam for 10 minutes. Then you'll put your weight on. Once the weight is on, start turning this down. Now, once I put the weight on, I turn this down on my oven's case down to about 6, between where it says medium, which would be 5 and 6. And then once my gauge gets to 5 pounds, I turn it down to 4. Once it gets nearer 10, I turn it down to 3. That's my stovetop. Your stovetop could be a little different. At my elevation, my elevation is less than 1,000 feet above sea level. So with being 1,000 feet above sea level, or under 1,000 feet above sea level, I want to pressure can at 11 psi. If your particular canner has a gauge, 11 psi. If it just has a say it's old, you have an old canner, and it's just got a weighted gauge, which I can never seem to find mine when I want to show it to you guys. If it has a weighted gauge, it's 10 psi. If you go on the National Food Preservation website, it tells you all that. So does Ball. Their Blue Book of Canning and their Blue Book of Preserving for jams, jellies, salsas, things like that. They tell you step by step pretty much what your pressures are. The National Food Preservation Society will tell you exactly what you need to your elevation. But I know anything below 1,000 feet, 11 psi. That's all you have to know. It is 11 psi under 1,000 feet. If you're above 1,000 feet, then look on their site or check your area, because it runs anywhere from 11 psi to 15 psi. Like I said, depending on your elevation. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and get this going. I just wanted to walk through that step. And then when we're up rocking and rolling and, oh, well, that's how you get it started. Once it hits 11, you have to sit here and tweak this and to keep it at 11. Be careful, because like for the first 15 minutes you're canning, that thing can quickly climb on you and you not realize it. So you really have to pay attention. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't go to the bathroom until you're about 20 minutes in. So anything you need to get done prior to this step, get it done, because you're going to want to hang out in your kitchen for a minute. Once it hits 11 psi, set your timer. These beans are going to go, since we're doing quarts, 90 minutes. If they were pints, which you can also do these in pints, 75 minutes. But quarts, 90 minutes. I recommend doing quarts because I know at least in our house, even when it's just me and Chris, we eat a quart's worth of beans. But quarts, 90 minutes. All right. Well, I'm going to come back when we're ready to take these out, and we'll show you what's going to do. If I think of anything in between, I'll let you know. All right. I'll see you here in just a few. there was something I thought of real quick. As you're adjusting your temperature, baby steps. Initially, like I said, 5, when it gets to 5 psi, down to 5, 6-ish on my stove. When it gets to about 8 psi, I'm down to 3. If it keeps climbing, if your gauge keeps climbing and you're free, don't turn it all the way down to 1. Alright, you don't want any big swings in temperature. That will cause these jars to siphon, and you'll lose every bit of juice you have in those, and it'll create a mess. Or if you turn it up too high or whatever, you can blow out your safety valve, and then your pressure canning is done until you get a new safety valve. So, baby steps going down. Alright? Alright, well, I'll bring you back when these things are done, and we'll take a look at them and talk about what we got going on. Alright, I'll see you here in just a moment. Alright, guys. Back. Not that I was gone long when you're in, but we've done our 90 minutes of pressure canning. Now let's talk about that for a second, because in reality, this is why when you can, you need to plan on at least a half a day. I did 13 quarts total of stuff, 7 of these, 6 of the hamburger, and I've been canning for 11 hours. Even though you're canning it for 90 minutes, you still have to account for the time it takes to get it up to speed, maintain it, and then once I hit my 90 minutes, I shut this burner off. I then just proceed to let it sit here. You have to wait until this pin drops, right here, your catch pin, your lock pin, and this reads 0 before you can go anywhere. And it's still plenty hot. I mean, that bad boy's piping. After that drops, you want to wait an additional 5 minutes. Now, after I shut this off, it still took a good solid hour before that pin dropped. So, I mean, the reality of it is, even if the process of making what you're making moves quick, like the beans didn't take long. You know, we made that in pretty much real time and together, and that was my first time making it. We did it in about 33 minutes, 34 minutes. If I wouldn't have been running my mouth, we could have probably done it a lot quicker. But then we took almost another 3 hours to get to this stage after we started cooking. So make sure when you start canning, it is fun, and it'll save you so much money in the long run. But you have to make time for it. And I know a lot of people struggle with making time. Alright, so anyhow, enough on that spiel on time. It's cooled down, pins dropped, kids have walked through.
Hi.
And next thing we want to do is take this off, take your weight off. Alright, now, nothing came out of that, nothing hissed, beeped, or bumped. So we should be good to take this lid off. When you take your lid off and you turn it, when you lift this lid, lift it away from you, just in case, all right? Because you just never know. And I can already tell you I had some siphoning.
Hi.
All right, come on, guys.
Bedtime.
Yep. I can tell you I had some siphoning.
Hi.
Good night, ladies.
Hi.
Love you both. For a couple of things. Before I even looked in the pot, I could smell it. As soon as I lifted that lid off, I could smell the beans. And here, I'll show you what it can look like. It's not horrible, but see how the water isn't crystal clear? That means we had some siphoning, and that's okay. I mean, you're going to have siphoning. Even the biggest and best of professionals, people that have been doing this longer than I've been doing it. Me and Chris have been canning for, 10, 12 years now. Water bathing, you don't really get a whole lot of siphoning on, but pressure canning, you can. I've probably had more siphoning than I've had not siphoning. And it could be a number of factors, but it's a fact that as long as you don't do anything to make it horrible, you're in fine shape. Okay, so, I know I say this every time, but that's because I feel it's vitally important. When you go to remove your cans and you use your tongs, Make sure this isn't broken, isn't missing. That's important, man. That's like the glue that holds the jar to the tongs. You do not want them to look like this. I will have these tongs till the day I die as a reminder of what they should not look like. We've used these. We use these for a whole canning season. And it's scary stuff. Be safe. Get the right tool. Alright, the other thing you're going to want to grab is a towel. Now, when you pull these out, you don't want to grab the lid. You want to grab the jar. Here, I'll show you when I pull it out. Remember the 1-inch ring? That's where you want to grab. And you want to lift straight out, and as soon as you do, put a towel underneath of it so you got both hands. But right there's our baked beans. You know, and see how I got it wrapped around that bottom lip where the 1-inch line was? That's where you want to grab it at. Try not to death grip it either. Sorry, I'm setting these down behind you. Try not to death grip it, because if you death grip it wrong, I mean, you want to have a firm grip on it. Don't get me wrong. But you don't want to death grip it. That could lead you into some trouble in and of itself. Because if you death grip it, and what I mean by that is you just squeeze as hard as you can, and that's common in the beginning. If you accidentally grab that ring instead of the jar, and you do that, it will open up the jar and you'll get sprayed. I've had it happen to me. And luckily I had a shirt on. To those of you that know me, a lot of times when I'm not videotaping something, if I'm home, isn't that beautiful? Just gorgeous. Looks just like baked beans that you buy from the store. If I'm at home and I'm not going anywhere or doing anything, very rarely do I have a shirt on. It's usually just sweatpants or my work pants or whatever. I just put a shirt on for you guys to make you feel special. Alright, so now that when you move these out, when you take these out here, hold on, let me turn the camera so I can show you where I'm at and what I'm doing and all that jazz. Sorry, I am fumbling. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, it was daylight out at the beginning of this video, and now it's dark. When you set these down, you want an inch or two of space in between them. Because what you want that air to circulate around them, you know, so they cool evenly and consistently. So, another thing you want to do as you after you get all your jars out, and you'll see, I mean, I don't think you can see it on there so much as I can in person. They're bubbling because they're that hot. So the next thing you want to do after you get your jars out of your canner is let them sit. Don't touch them. Don't mess with them. Don't take them in the car. Don't pick them up. You know, just let them sit for at least 12 to 24 hours. That's what you're looking for. That's your end game, is 12 to 24 hours. That lets those bad boys completely sit, or completely seal. Because they may not seal the very second you take them out. When they do seal, though, you'll hear a ping. So, to know if they're sealed, here, I'll show you on the hamburger I did up earlier. So here's the hamburger we did earlier, and you don't rinse your hamburger, but for whatever reason, I had an astronomical amount of, well, what I perceived to be an astronomical amount of grease left, or oil left in the hamburger. Because you don't rinse it, you just dump it into a colander as you fry it, or as you brown it, and run with it. Oh, it just popped. But this top right here, if it wasn't sealed, it would be able to push up and down. That's sealed. I can also hold it by its rim. That's how sealed that is. Those are the things you look for. So, what you do after you get those out, give them an inch or two of space, just like we've got here. plenty of room for them to breathe. You let them sit 12 to 24 hours, and then once they're done, I don't know if you noticed on that jar I just showed you, the hamburger, but ooh, that got bright, didn't it? But it didn't have the ring on it anymore. Once they've sat and they've cooled, they've done their 12 to 24 hours, you take that ring off, you do its little test, all right, it holds, you leave that ring off. If for any reason this meat isn't any good and it goes bad, here's what happens. This is kind of a layman's version. Say there is bacteria in here, okay? Bad bacteria. Oh, there goes another one. What happens is that bad bacteria, as it's feeding on things in there, it dies. Well, then it produces a gas. It becomes a gas when it dies. You know, like an animal's body breaks down. Why it's breaking down produces methane, then it turns into soil. It's doing the same thing in here. The only problem is it's building that gas, just like a methane. It will pop that lid off. It'll break the seal for you. If you have that ring on there, you don't know it. So you leave the ring off of there. That way, if you go to pick this up off the shelf and the lid falls off, you know. Or if you ever go to open a can and it doesn't sound vacuumed, like it didn't go shh, or it doesn't give you a little resistance when you try to open it, chances are good that seal broke sometime while it was sitting in your pantry. So that is how we can baked beans. I did try to heat up the leftover baked beans. Unfortunately, they didn't get to go with dinner. They just didn't have enough time to cook. But I did cook them down, so we'll have them tomorrow. We'll throw some bacon on top of it, throw it in the oven to reheat it, and make it baked beans. But that is how you make the baked beans. I thought they tasted fantastic. I thoroughly agree with Carol on that. She said that they, are better than, a commercial baked bean at any rate. And I would agree with that. And here's the cool thing about these. We made them from scratch, right? So, holidays, 4th of July is coming up. If you make these now, all you have to literally do is dump the product in a pan, put it in your oven with some bacon, and you've got baked beans for the 4th of July. You don't have to take hours to make it. All you got to do is put it in the oven, bake it up with your bacon or whatever you choose to put in it, ham, hot dogs, whatever, and it's done. Done, complete, so easy. We spent a little time today making them, but it'll pay off dividends down the road when you've got guests at your house, that you're trying to visit with while you're trying to make things cook and all that. So while you're trying to cook and, be a host or hostess at the same time. All right, well, we'll let these cool. It's late. I've had a long day in the kitchen between canning 2 different products and making dinner. And it's time to retire up to the bedroom for a good night's rest. So, that being said, I love you guys. Tell somebody else you love them. It will make their whole day a whole lot better, I guarantee it. And as we get through this pandemic thing, if you want, give someone a hug. It's awesome. All right, I love you. I will talk to you guys later. All right, bye.